Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the A segment of episode 24 of The Loud House, Funny Business. We begin this segment with Lincoln heading outside, about to read a comic book, when suddenly he notices that Luann has returned home, but she's having a hard time carrying all of her comedy props at once. So Lincoln goes to help her out. So Luann has a business where clients hire her to perform at different parties. Her business is actually called Funny Business Inc. So we have a title drop for this segment's title. But in any case, Luann admits that it's hard to keep track of all these different parties when she doesn't have an assistant. This confuses Lincoln because he thought Lucy was LuAnns Assistant. Luann confirms that Lincoln was right about Lucy being her assistant, but it didn't last very long. In fact, besides Lucy, we find out that Lynn, Lenny, and Lisa were all LuAnn's assistant at one point in time or another, but none of them lasted very long for one reason or another. And Luann now is asking Lincoln if he would be her assistant, but Lincoln is hesitant to accept because he admits he's not much of a performer compared to Luann. Luann assures him that he wouldn't have to worry about the audience, that would be her job while he just helps her. Lincoln's still not entirely convinced, but then he notices that Luann has a piece of cake with her. Luann reveals that while it's true that her clients do pay her in money, they also end up paying her with leftover birthday cake as well. And Luann notices that Lincoln finds this particular piece of cake to look very delicious. So she convinces Lincoln to be her assistant with the prospect of having some cake, and Lincoln accepts. He can't say no to cake. So we get our first birthday party where Lincoln is helping Luann, and he has the whipped cream and he's using it to put it on the pie that he's supposed to give to Luann. But when Lincoln's heading over to get to Luann, he accidentally trips on the whipped cream can he was just using, and it causes him to accidentally do a pratfall. And the kids in the audience actually really like this, and they find it funny. And Lincoln can't help but feel good about making these kids laugh. So we see a few more of these birthday parties, and now Lincoln's intentionally doing pratfalls, and the kids love it, but Luann's not too happy about Lincoln doing these pratfalls, and at one point she wants him to stop with the pratfalls, insisting that she is the clown and he is just the assistant. Lincoln, however, isn't very happy about how Luann's saying this to him, and when he tries a pratfall in front of Lynn and Lana and they end up liking it, Lincoln is convinced that Luann doesn't know what she's talking about. So we see him doing some more intentional pratfalls at birthday parties, and Luann's really upset about this. And at one point when they're returning home from a party, she intentionally deflates some of the whoopee cushions to make Lincoln reinflate them to get back at him for upstaging her. Lincoln's grumbling about this, but then the Funny Business Hotline has a call, and when Lincoln answers it, it turns out whoever this client is, they want Lincoln to be the performer, having seen his pratfalls at other birthday parties. And Lincoln brags about this to Luann, but Luann is convinced that the pratfalls for a whole hour won't be enough. But Lincoln is convinced the audience will love it because they loved it before. So now it's the day of the birthday party that Lincoln is entertaining at. And when he questions how old the birthday girl is to her mother, her mom confirms that the girl actually just turned 13, the same age as Lynn. And we find out that this girl and her friends are all either goths or emos, and Lincoln says this isn't his usual frame of reference or who he usually entertains for, but he still thinks that the pratfalls will go over well. And we find out that the birthday girl, her name is Maggie, and she's voiced by Kari Walgreen. But when Lincoln tries out the pratfalls, it does not work, and Maggie is not very happy about this. She doesn't take it well when Lincoln accidentally pratfalls onto her birthday cake either. And while the mother insists that Lincoln tries something else because he's supposed to be a professional clown, right? Lincoln tries to pass off a bathroom break to get some time to himself. Really, he hides in a photo booth that's set up there, and he tries to call Luann on the funny business hotline. But Luann keeps purposefully hanging up on Lincoln, pretty much because she's still angry at him for upstaging her, and she demands that Lincoln not keep calling because it is a business line. But Lincoln manages to get her to hear out that she was right about him not being an expert performer, and that he's bombing out there, and he's asking Luann if she would help him out. Luann, though, refuses, insisting that Lincoln being humiliated or failing would humble him. But when Lincoln admits that his abysmal performance is also affecting the reputation of funny business, Luann puts aside her frustrations to help Lincoln out. When she arrives and lets Lincoln know, she admits that she's dealt with emos before and has a plan for what will entertain them. She ends up going with a mime routine, and Lincoln has a mime outfit too. And this actually goes well for Maggie and her friends. In fact, we get a part where Lincoln and Luann are doing the mirror routine, and the emos really like it, and it ends up going well. And it turns out funny business's reputation has been saved. The parents that are there now say they want to hire funny business for other parties they might have. On the way back home, Lincoln compliments Luann for the amazing performance she gave, and he apologizes for the fact that he did upstage her when it was her business. She was meant to be the main performer. Luann, though, now that she's calmed down, had admitted that she remembers how good it felt getting her first laughs from people too, and she admits that she shouldn't have been so harsh with Lincoln, and admits that she didn't handle the situation as any better. And so both Lincoln and Luann have made amends with each other, and Lincoln still agreed to be LuAnns assistant when she questions if he would still help her. And then the segment ends with them accidentally doing a pratfall because of some of the props falling, and they both get a good laugh out of it. Now, this is a segment I really did enjoy. I found this to be a very good segment. This, as you can imagine, after hearing the recap, Luann was the sister in the spotlight this time around, and many people liked it better compared to April Fool's Rules. Now, for those of you who have seen my recap and thoughts for April Fool's Rules, you'll know I'm actually one of those people who didn't hate April Fool's Rules. I actually thought I had no issues with that segment whatsoever. And I actually liked both the segments with Luann. They show different sides of Luann's humor, the good and the extreme. Now, part of why I really enjoyed this segment is actually because it actually did something that I wish happened a bit more often in the segments. I've mentioned before that some of the storylines I'm not fond of in the show are when multiple characters are at conflict, or multiple characters are at fault for a conflict, but only Lincoln ends up getting blamed for it, or everyone pins all the blame on Lincoln and kind of ignores when other characters were at fault too. They didn't do that in this segment. The conflict between Lincoln and Luann was shown that they both were at fault. Because, yes, it was wrong for Lincoln to upstage Luann and act like he knew better when Luann was the more experienced in this field. But at the same time, Luann herself admitted that she didn't handle the situation as any better than Lincoln did either. Because while it's true that Lincoln did was upstaging her, at the same time, Luann kind of admitted that part of her motive, while she did have a valid reason to be upset with Lincoln, Luann did also admit that her frustration was partially out of jealousy out of Lincoln getting the laughs and being popular too. And there were a few moments where we saw Luann not handling the situation well and being a little petty about it, such as when she intentionally deflated the whoopee cushions to make Lincoln refill them, or when she was planning to let Lincoln fail or bomb his performance at Maggie's party. It did feel, while she did say it was to humble him, it did seem like it was more so just to kind of stick it to him for upstaging her. But when Lincoln did admit that his performance was hurting the reputation of the business, it was good to see Luann was able to put her anger, her frustration aside and realize for the greater good of the company or for funny business, she would put aside her anger or her frustration and actually make sure that the business got a better reputation. And at the end of it, when it succeeded, she was able to calm down and realize while her reasons for being upset with Lincoln were valid, at the same time, she could have handled it better than she did too. So that was great. It was a segment that showed Lincoln and at least one of his sisters being at fault for a conflict, but it didn't paint either of them as the bad guy. It just showed both had a point, but also both of them were at fault for the conflict. Whether it was Lincoln getting a bit too egotistical about it, or Luann letting her jealousy get the better of her, it was still nice to see that they were able to mend fences about that. And as far as what else this segment is known for, this was the introduction of the character Maggie. And as of the recording of this video, this is Maggie's only appearance so far, and she's already turned out to be a very popular character despite this one appearance. Some fans like to there's a lot of fan works that like to portray Maggie as having become friends with Luann after the events of Funny Business, while other fan works do like to portray Luann and Maggie as more than friends. And likewise, there's also a lot of fan works that like to portray Maggie as being friends with Lucy and Haiku, probably because they all share the goth emo similarities. And some fan works even like to portray Haiku and Maggie as sisters. I mean, granted, we didn't see Haiku at Maggie's birthday party, but I'm sure some fans had come up with some explanations for why that wouldn't be the case if they were sisters. But it's kind of fun to see that Maggie's proved to be very popular despite her single appearance. Kind of like how Tabby Giggles, Polly Payne, and Haiku from Dance Dance Resolution had they haven't had many appearances yet, but they're still very popular with fans. And it's also like Christina and Carol Pingree too. Very minor in the grand scheme of things so far, but still incredibly popular. So I wouldn't object if we saw Maggie appear in a future segment. I think it would be fun to see her return. And, while I'm thinking about it, I really liked Kari Walgreen's performance as Maggie. In my experience, I've usually seen Kari Walgreen playing more cheerful or energetic characters. So seeing her play a more downbeat and unemotive character was a pretty cool sight, and it was a great show of Kari Walgreen's range. She has a lot of talent, so good on you, Kari Walgreen. You did a good job as Maggie. And this is also the first segment where one of the twins appears, but the other twin doesn't. In this case, Lana appeared, but Lola didn't appear. So, there you have it. I really enjoyed this segment. It was a nice way to show a different side of Luann besides her Joker-like qualities. And it was nice to have a segment where Lincoln and another character were at conflict with each other, and they both were in the wrong about something, or they both didn't handle the situation as well as they could have, and they both admitted that, and they were able to mend fences. I really wish we'd see more segments with that. And as to be expected, we'll be covering the B segment next. Take care, and until next time.